I looked at low carbon emissions, and before I start, I just wanted to give some background information. So according to the UN, low carbon emission means continuing the same economic growth while trying to reduce carbon greenhouse gas emissions, hence eventually creating an economy that's low in emissions but also maintains the economic growth that's been promised for every nation. So I kind of thought about, so I asked myself a question: what does the world need to do in order to achieve a low carbon emissions? So that's going to be the central theme of my presentation, and I'm going to try to be in 3 minutes, so just pay attention. I use a bit of funny graphs here, which I made last night. Each of this thing, people, you stick figure you see, it represents 1 billion people on the planet. And this is the year we're in, and then I'll go this on to the final phase. So what I wanted to show you is the world in 2010. By the way, these little dollar signs you see are the different income brackets people are in the planet are in. This is what I like to call the Chelsea and Surrey group, the people who are really rich. Then you have the emerging markets, and then you have the one that's kind of out of poverty, but also trying to go into the higher class. And this is that people that are in absolute poverty, so people living less than $2 or $1 a day. So we have 2 billion people in 2010 living in extreme poverty. A group of 3 billion people who are kind of out of poverty but still not yet there. And then you have a billion people who are in the upper middle class, and then you have a billion people who are really rich, has cars. Also, another thing to remember is this group also tend to have the largest birth rate, highest number of children per woman. They have lower tendency and lower number of births. Also, they have higher education rate, better access to health care, all sorts of, they have a better living standards. So this is 2010. As you can see, there's 7 billion people on the planet. Now, if we move to 2025, what does the world look like? So this guy slowly moves into here, and then this one person comes back to here. We get 1 billion people out of poverty, another 1 billion people in there. So this is what the world looks like. We also add another 1 billion people onto the planet. So this is a planet that's 8 billion people living in this kind of situation. The good thing is we got 1 billion people out of poverty, extreme poverty, but we still have this good chunk of people living in some sort of poverty, but still trying to improve. Good thing is this person is almost going into the rich area, and we have 2 billion people who are in the upper middle class. So this is what the world looks in 2025. And I just want you guys to know that from 2010 to 25, it took us 15 years to add 1 extra billion people on the planet. Okay? So now let's move to 2050. What will the world look like in 2050? So we'll have 2 billion people who are very rich, another 3 billion people, actually we'll have 3 billion people who are very rich. We'll get this person out of poverty, and we'll also add another 1 billion people onto the planet. It took us 25 years to add the second billion. So what does that mean? We've reduced the birth rate. 3 minutes, sorry, we're almost done. We've reduced the birth rate. Less people are in poverty. In fact, very people in less poverty. And then further on, we have this kind of world that we're in. 3 billion people in each. And you might answer, how does this have to do with any low carbon emissions? Well, if we get more people out of poverty, they tend to have smaller number of families. That means smaller number of populations. That means less number of reliance on natural resources. But yes, we did add another 2 billion people, but they're more efficient than they were in here. They tend to, and this is when the Earth reaches its carrying capacity and we see a decline in population. So this is what I predict in the future. Now, let's go back and see what the world was 20 years. We have data for China, Bangladesh, and the United States. And we have data from 1980 to 2006. I want to prove to you that as people get richer, their emission levels decrease. It's important to know this is the GDP per person capita, and on this axis we see the carbon dioxide intensity. So this is not the per average person, but what the economy as a whole emits and what it comes down to per person. So if we play the play button, you'll see that China is actually going down, so is the United States, and Bangladesh kind of remains same. So these are 3 income groups that I showed. Okay? So the point I really wanted to make, and I want you guys to all go home with, if we get people out of poverty, if we get people to take better living standards, their emissions will go down, and hence we'll reach a low carbon economy. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions?
As people get richer, don't they spend more money and therefore waste more resources?
That's been the notion in previous years. You're right, but with the advancement of technology and with more renewable energies, we've noticed that as people get richer, they tend to adapt more eco-friendly lifestyles. So in the future, you'll actually have people having smaller number of families and actually creating less amount of pollution than they have. The trend is that rich families will continue to have smaller number of families, and poor countries will continue to have a poor amount of, smaller number of families. So yes, individually it might increase, but on the bigger picture, and that's why I showed you the carbon intensity graph, will show that it will go down. And it's going to happen when we reach a carrying capacity.
The peak oil theory was saying that when we reach peak oil, the standard of living of everybody is going to drop.
But that's depending on oil,
Yeah.
right? A lot of countries won't depend on oil. Countries such as Iceland and even in Kenya, they're producing geothermal energies, so they're going far away from oil. Peak oil theory looks at what the effect of oil is going to be on society. They didn't really take into consideration of other energy sources or what other governments might do.
No, any questions? No? Thank you. Yeah, what else? Thank you.